Thank you. That concludes topical questions. The next item of business is a statement by John Swinney on Scotland's commitment to international development. The First Minister will take questions at the end of his statement, and so there should be no interventions or interruptions. And I call on the First Minister.
So last week I returned from a visit to Zambia and Malawi to see some of the projects and partnerships that are supported by the Scottish Government's International Development Programme. This was the first ever visit by a First Minister of Scotland to Zambia and the first by a First Minister to Malawi since 2005. Scotland, of course, has a close relationship with both of these countries, built over the last 150 years. So it was important to me to witness those relationships firsthand and to further strengthen them in person. To hear directly from the people in these countries of the challenges they face, the aspirations they have and their goals for our ongoing partnership. These partnerships were initially built through the outreach of institutions like Scotland's churches, but today they are threaded through every facet of our communities, our institutions and our governments. And though they have evolved over time, the strength and the depth of these ties has never wavered. And that is what I saw for myself during my visit. I experienced the warmest of welcomes in Zambia and Malawi and the reassurance that these remain close, innovative and forward-looking relationships with great potential for future growth. My visit coincided with the 20th anniversary of the signing of the original cooperation agreement between the governments of Scotland and Malawi. From that important moment in 2005, we have grown Scotland's international development footprint and its contribution to global solidarity to the shape and level that we all see today. Our international development and humanitarian crisis funding reached nearly £13 million this year, and we stand by our commitment to increase it to £16 million per annum by the time this Parliament ends. In addition to Malawi, our international development work now includes partnerships with Zambia, Rwanda and Pakistan. And our support to international communities comes not only through our International Development Fund, but through our Climate Justice Fund and through funding to respond to global humanitarian crises. This is a total commitment of roughly £25 million. Like every other member in this chamber, I know full well that we are in the midst of the most challenging fiscal situation since devolution, and times are tough for households and businesses across Scotland. My focus on resolving those pressures within the powers of this government are unwavering. But it is possible, indeed necessary and right, for Scotland to play her part in the global issues and in the global challenge that we face. Failure to do so would simply worsen the conditions and inequalities that fuel conflict, deprivation and injustice throughout the world. Scotland is showing leadership and is offering sustained funding. We Scots are and will continue to be good global citizens, and I am proud to serve a country that values its commitments to the world's most vulnerable. Many people in the Global South live in extreme poverty, and the challenge to their survival is made ever greater by the devastating and increasing impacts of climate change, which they largely have not caused. I saw this during my visit. Malawi, the seventh poorest country in the world, is experiencing simultaneous economic and climate crises. In my time there, I met people who are contending with high inflation, devastating levels of debt to service and crippling food insecurity. At the same time, they are enduring the climatic shocks of alternating drought and flooding from tropical storms and cyclones. But I also saw the difference that our interventions are making. In both Zambia and Malawi, I saw that our projects, our commitment and our investment are improving lives. They are working in health, inclusive education, equalities, renewable energy and climate justice. They are rooted in those close relationships between countries and institutions, finding shared solutions and supporting shared goals. The new Scottish Government-funded Blantyre research laboratories in Malawi and Zambia are a powerful testament to this. 3 universities in Glasgow, Blantyre and Lusaka are working together to conduct research into non-communicable diseases. And through the shared commitment to collaborative research, they are improving healthcare for all. I saw this at Kamuzu University of Health Sciences in Blantyre, where I met Malawi's first ever cohort of homegrown dentists. Their T-shirts proudly proclaimed them locally relevant, globally competent. And in Zambia, I saw the paediatric operating room installed by Dundee-based Kids Operating Rooms. I had previously visited its sister operating theatre here in Dundee. This health partnership will significantly improve access to safe surgery for thousands of children in Zambia. I am equally proud of our efforts in Malawi and Zambia to secure equitable access to education for disabled learners and girls. In Malawi, I was able to meet teachers from Balaka Secondary School, where we are funding scholarships for girls, as well as critical wraparound services such as mentorship and career guidance. And in Zambia, I met with partners and grantees from our Women and Girls Fund. This is a key programme for advancing gender equality and the rights of women and girls. At that meeting, I was able to hear directly from them about the challenges they face and their determination to tackle gender inequality and gender-based violence in their society. Our Women and Girls Fund is designed to work at a grassroots level. That means we work in partnership alongside groups and communities. We learn from them as they advocate on the issues that so directly affect them. It is the same with our Climate Justice Communities programme. On my visit, I met people in Chambalanga village in Zomba, in Malawi, who are taking control of their lives and livelihoods with support from our Climate Justice Fund. This has only strengthened my resolve to ensure that the value of and the vital need for community-led climate finance programmes like ours are heard loud and clear at COP30 in Brazil and in climate negotiations far beyond. I am determined that Scotland will continue to support climate justice action in the Global South. Presiding Officer, borrowing can be a vital tool for economic growth and development, but when borrowing grows too much or too quickly, it becomes problematic. And this is what is happening across developing countries, where total public debt reached a record $29 trillion in 2023. In 2020, Zambia became the first African country to default on its debt, and the IMF recently reported that in 2024, Malawi's overall public debt to GDP ratio was around 79%. Across the Global South, unsustainable debt repayments are consuming resources that should be used to build schools, hospitals and climate-resilient infrastructure to create progress and opportunity. Climate change is exacerbating this problem. The Global South should not be forced to choose between repaying their creditors and helping their communities to recover from storms and droughts. Scotland has consistently advocated for other countries to follow our example of giving funding for loss and damage as grants, not loans, so that countries can recover from extreme climate events without taking on additional debt. But there is also a need to look at the structural issues that entrench cycles of debt and dependence. Prior to my visit, I met SCIAF, Christian Aid Scotland and Hamza Yousaf MSP to discuss the Jubilee Debt Campaign. It calls for a fairer approach to resolving global debt crises and proposes solutions at a national and international level. In the face of global debt justice, I am convinced that Scotland must continue to lead with compassion and conviction. We can and we will continue to use our voice to speak out against injustice. So today I announced to Parliament our support for the Cancel Debt, Choose Hope campaign. I raise my voice and my government's voice and Scotland's voice in support of finding a fair long-term solution to the global debt crisis. And I've spoken today of our development assistance programmes through which we provide financial assistance to Malawi and Zambia. These must be sustained, but we must also find ways to nurture greater economic activity and growth in the Global South, to foster greater economic freedom. During my visit, I heard Malawi and Zambia's determination to move from aid relationships with the Global North to ones based on increased trade and investment. I met in Blantyre with partners in our Malawi Investment Initiative, the National Bank of Malawi Development Bank and St Andrews Macadamia Farm. At that meeting, and in a subsequent meeting with Malawi's President Mutharika, I offered to use my government's convening power to host discussions on boosting investment in developing countries. This is a crucial ingredient to encouraging greater economic activity and growth in the Global South. Presiding Officer, 20 years on from the start of our international development programme, My government reaffirms its commitment to this work. We remember the relationships forged 150 years ago, and we are proud of all the good that has come from them. We will continue to grow and deepen those relationships, to evolve them to meet the emerging challenges of our time. There is, of course, still work to do, but we are committed to doing it. We will continue to work together in partnership to make a positive difference both abroad and here at home. We will continue to be good global citizens. Scotland, as it always has, will continue to play her part.
Thank you. The First Minister will now take questions on the issues raised in the statement. I intend to allow around 20 minutes for questions, after which we'll move on to the next item of business, and I'd be grateful if members who wish to put a question were to press their request to speak buttons. And I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. John Swinney wants us to believe that his motives are sincere, but I question why he thinks that foreign affairs should be his focus. There are so many challenges here in Scotland. These should be his focus. 1 in 6 Scots are on NHS waiting lists. On his final day of his trip to Africa, his government revealed that half of all Scottish adults are now living with at least one long-term health condition. Scotland is suffering a dental crisis, but John Swinney uses taxpayers' money to train dentists overseas. He uses taxpayers' money to help other countries address climate change, while missing almost every single domestic climate change target. Scotland's economy is stagnant, with too few opportunities for young people. Our school system has lost its international reputation for excellence. So why is he not focused on these issues here in Scotland? Foreign affairs are not his remit. They are reserved. He keeps saying that we must be good global citizens, that Scotland should play its part. But we do. As part of the United Kingdom, we have a long and proud record of helping those in need. Isn't it about time the First Minister focused on the many serious issues here in Scotland?
First Minister.
Let me assure Russell Finlay that I am very focused on the issues and challenges that face the people of Scotland, and as a result of that, and as you will have seen from the news this morning, that there is data demonstrating that waiting lists are falling, that the number of procedures being undertaken in our health service are improving. Our young people have just delivered a very strong level of performance back to pre-COVID levels in the examination system, and we are taking steps to ensure that our public services meet the needs and the expectations of people in Scotland, as well as being focused, as I was last night, on a discussion with the Scottish Technology Council on a variety of ideas in relation to economic growth within Scotland. So for all of I will absolutely be held to account for my focus on domestic issues. I'll be answering questions again here on Thursday on the basis of my responsibilities, but I also am very happy to be here today to explain to Parliament this Government's commitment to making sure that Scotland fulfils our obligation as a good global citizen, because the issues that will affect Scotland will be affected by what is happening in the Global South. It is unavoidable. The climate crisis in the Global South will have an effect on us here in Scotland. The issues that we're wrestling with on health programmes in the Global South will have a resonance here in Scotland. And one thing I'm very, very proud of is to lead a country that is outward-looking, is focused on working with others, and that's what my government will do.
I call Neil Bibby.
Welcome the First Minister's statement, his report back from his trip and his commitment to international development. It's important to recognise this follows in the footsteps of Jack McConnell and, of course, Gordon Brown, who set up the Department for International Development and led efforts to cancel debt long before he stepped foot in Africa last week. It's clear that when organisations work together, we achieve much more than when they work alone. Whatever amount we spend on international development, even with a record funding settlement from the UK Government, it is crucial for public support that we maximise impact for Scottish taxpayers as well as those in developing countries. So on maximising impact, how will the Scottish Government work with the FCDO? How will Scottish-based aid charities be prioritised in terms of funding support? Will the Government support match funding models proposed by organisations like SCIAF? And what will the Scottish Government do to ensure that no international companies make any private profit from any Scottish taxpayers' money?
First Minister.
First of all, can I make it clear, as I have made clear in all of my public communication about these issues, that I warmly welcome the foundations of the Scottish Government's International Development Programme that took place under the leadership of my predecessor, Jack McConnell. That was an initiative that attracted cross-party support 20 years ago. I'm not so sure such cross-party support exists today, but I certainly assure Mr Bibby of the support of the Scottish Government and the Scottish National Party in that endeavour. I think the need for our intervention today is ever greater than even it was in 2005. In relation to the maximisation of impact and how we will work with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, I had every support from the High Commission in Lusaka and the High Commission in Lilongwe in Malawi for the visits that I undertook, and I put on record my appreciation to the support of the Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office in that respect. In relation to Scottish charities, we of course work with a range of different charitable organisations. Our programmes are refreshed from year to year as we establish how we can maximise the impact of those programmes. So from year to year, some Scottish charities will be supported and others will be supported in other years. And finally, the focus of all of our programmes is about making an impact at grassroots level. And that's been the thinking that's been brought into our international development programmes, and I think it serves us well as a means of understanding how we can change lives as a consequence of the investment we make.
Blair Adamson, to be followed by Craig Hoy.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. As convener of the SEAC Committee, I often hear about how Scotland works collaboratively with international partners, lessons Scotland gains from those partnerships, and in what way these relationships are mutually beneficial. I would like to highlight a Malawi project which was for mapping wells in the country at modest cost to Scotland Fund, but in the 2019 floods it completely came into its own as it became a mechanism for preventing communities from being affected by waterborne disease following that disaster in Malawi. So does the First Minister agree with me that continuing this support is the right thing to do, but that saving lives is priceless?
First Minister.
I saw at first hand some of the examples of how lives had quite literally been saved by the programmes the Scottish Government is involved in. I saw a particular water supply programme in the Zomba area of Malawi, where the application of technology has created the ability to have clean water supplies to the population and also to support irrigation projects which are supporting and sustaining lives in those communities. And it was not lost on me that, and the comment was made to me by a number of our development partners, that our projects and our investment are quite literally saving lives in these communities, and it's something the people of Scotland should be proud of, the efforts that have been undertaken to support those much less fortunate than we are today.
Craig Hoy, to be followed by Claire Hawley.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In the same week that the First Minister was in Africa, committing devolved taxpayers' revenues to countries including Pakistan, Zambia and Rwanda, closer to home, SNP-run Dumfries and Galloway Council was consulting on cuts which include closing leisure centres, scrapping music tuition fees for poorer children and cancelling all funding to citizen advice bureaus. Given that the First Minister's first duty is to the citizens of this country and that he is acutely aware that foreign affairs and international aid are reserved, will John Swinney now stop pretending to be the President of an independent state and instead show solidarity with our own communities by fixing the problems that his government has created over the last 19 years?
Thank you, Mr Hoy. As Mr Hoy will be aware, the question should be put on issues which are raised in the statement. I am not wholly convinced that that is the case, and we will call Claire Hawley to be followed by Sarah Boyack.
Presiding Officer, I was delighted to see the First Minister visit Malawi this month, and as he'll be aware, my constituency has strong ties to the country through Blantyre and South Lanarkshire being the birthplace of David Livingstone. Can the First Minister provide more details on the partnership between both countries through the Blantyre research programme, which I understand the Scottish Government supports financially, particularly in relation to how the project can positively benefit our two countries?
First Minister.
President Officer, I saw at first hand the investment that's been made in the Blantyre Research Programme, which originates as a partnership between the University of Glasgow and the Kamuzu University in Blantyre. It was also added to by, and I saw the new laboratory at the University of University of Zambia in Lusaka, which enables there to be a 3-country research programme, which is looking at non-communicable diseases, but also looking at vaccine efficacy, particularly in relation to cholera and also in relation to COVID vaccinations. Now, what that enables us to be part of, and what enables the universities in Africa to be part of, is a multinational network of exchange on research issues on a par to enable there to be a more sophisticated research process undertaken. And that is a combination to collective enhancement of human health as a consequence. And I want to pay tribute to the leadership of the University of Glasgow, who have given tremendous commitment to this venture over a number of years. And it is enhancing human health, and it's something that we should be very proud of in the exchanges that have taken place. And of course, it does reinforce the connection that Claire Hawkey puts to me of Blantyre, the birthplace of David Livingstone, to the projects that are taken forward and deeply appreciated by the people of Malawi.
Sarah Boyack, to be followed by Emma Harper.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, our cross-party group on international development had very positive feedback about the transformative impact our Scottish International Development Fund delivers, such as employment and education for women and climate-resilient food production. But our report into the Scottish Government's International Development Fund recommended that the Government should provide greater clarity and transparency on its funding to improve accountability so we can monitor its impact and the benefits for local communities. So will the Scottish Government now do that?
First Minister.
I'm very supportive of such an approach, because I think it is important that public confidence around the effectiveness of these programmes is maximised. So I think the suggestion that Sarah Boyack puts to me is a strong one. It is essential. I think international development work, that's what I felt about it 20 years ago when it was enabled by Jack McConnell's government, was essential because it establishes the partnership and the connection between ourselves and other countries, and enables us to learn from each other and to assist others facing some of the acute challenges. In the intervening years, the climate challenge has become ever more threatening to communities in Zambia and Malawi. So I'm very happy to explore those issues. I'll ask the External Affairs Secretary, Angus Robertson, to explore them in more detail and to take forward the helpful suggestions that have been made.
Emma Harper, to be followed by Patrick Harvey.
Thank you, President Officer. The UK is delivering less than half of the UN target for international development. Can the First Minister describe further evidence that he's heard on his recent trip of the damage that has been caused by wider cuts to international aid budgets?
With regards to issues raised in the statement, First Minister.
President Officer, I think there is an important aspect of the heart of my statement, which is about the need for us to provide constant support to the Global South, because if we don't, the issues that are affecting the Global South will have ever more acute impacts on ourselves, and we will have to manage those implications. So somehow, you know, the idea which has been essentially put forward in the exchanges today is that we can just ignore all of these issues and that they have nothing to do with us. Well, I could not take a more different opinion. I think these issues have got everything to do with us, and we should deploy the support that we can within the agreements that are reached in Parliament to support these programmes to ensure that Scotland can fulfil our international obligations.
Patrick Harvey, to be followed by Pam Gossel.
To be meaningful, international development must be rooted in climate justice, and I think the First Minister recognises this. One of the key asks of the Scottish Government from Scotland's International Development Alliance is for the Government to endorse the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. By doing so, they would be joining 143 city, local and subnational governments around the world, including Glasgow and Edinburgh city councils. Will the First Minister add Scotland's national voice to that growing global call for a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty by formally endorsing it?
First Minister.
President Officer, Patrick Harvey correctly identifies the impact of climate change as being an exacerbation of the challenges that are already faced in the Global South. And it was evident to me that, as well as dealing with acute and desperate levels of poverty, climate change was adding another level of threat. So I recognise that connection. That is why the Scottish Government's programmes are focused in that fashion. And I'll give consideration to the point that he's raised with me today about the treaty.
Pam Gossel, to be followed by Stuart McMillan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The First Minister likes to preach about gender equality and about the rights of women and girls when he is abroad. However, women and girls here in Scotland will not forget how they were treated by the First Minister's government. The SNP Scottish Government has chosen to embrace gender self-ID that threatens single-sex spaces while also ignoring the ruling of
Let's hear the member. Thank you.
On the definition of the word women. When will the First Minister finally listen to the voices of women and girls from his own country who are demanding he protects the women's rights in Scotland?
Thank you. With reference to any comment in the statement,
I think, Presiding Officer, Pam Gossel raises an issue with me which is covered in my statement, which is about the impact of gender-based violence against women and girls. And whether gender-based violence takes place in Malawi, Zambia or in Scotland, it is completely and utterly reprehensible and unacceptable. So I represent a government that takes that view, and that will underpin the approach that we take in public policy in Scotland.
Stuart McMillan, to be followed by Liam MacArthur.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. We know that in an increasingly interconnected world, international development is a necessity, including in Commonwealth countries wherever Parliament plays an important role in the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. Can the First Minister set out why international support is so important for Scotland and also the world?
First Minister.
President Officer, as I've set out in my statement, I think there's an interconnectedness about the issues that affect Scotland and the issues that affect the Global South. And we have to ensure that the actions that we take as a good global citizen are assisting in resolving some of the extraordinarily acute challenges that are faced by people in the Global South. And that underpins the policy approach that we took. If I go back to the discussions 20 years ago in this Parliament, the United Kingdom Government made it clear to the Scottish Government at the time that it welcomed the Scottish Government's participation in international development activity because it recognised the scale of the challenge that was involved. And this Parliament embraced that. I welcome that foundation, and that's the foundation of the answer to Mr McMillan's question.
Liam MacArthur, to be followed by Rona Mackay.
Thank you. Can I declare an interest as a co-convener of the cross-party group on Malawi and warmly welcome the visit to Zambia, but particularly to Malawi. And I think expressing some maybe surprise that this is the first time the First Minister had been to Malawi since 2005 and Jack McConnell's visit. As well as welcoming, though, the funding from Scottish Government, will the First Minister agree that the strength of this relationship is built on the people-to-people civic society links between communities in Dumfries and Galloway all the way up to the Northern Isles, which aren't necessarily funded by Scottish Government? And does he recognise the work of the Scottish-Malawi Partnership and the Malawi-Scotland Partnership in supporting, connecting and reinforcing the relationships that provide so much good, not just to the people in the warm heart of Africa, but also to citizens here in Scotland?
First Minister.
I think I couldn't agree with Mr MacArthur more. I've had the privilege of interacting with the Scotland-Malawi Partnership and the Malawi-Scotland Partnership, and these are two excellent organisations that foster and nurture the type of community-to-community relationship that Mr MacArthur is highlighting. I recently attended an event with a Boys Brigade company in Dunblane who have a regular interaction with a school in Malawi. The young men from that organisation raised over £100,000 to support developments in Malawi this year. They are coming to Butte House next week to explain to me the experience they had over the summer when they travelled to Malawi to undertake exactly the type of work that Mr MacArthur has said. So yes, the government has plays a part, but the Scotland-Malawi and the Malawi-Scotland partnerships help to encourage the type of partnership that Mr MacArthur is talking about which is rooted in the deep relationships between our countries that go back over 150 years, and we should work very hard to nurture those relationships.
Rona Mackay, to be followed by Douglas Ross.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Scotland has a history of supporting health systems in partner countries. What innovations and programmes have been brought about as a result of this, and how have these benefited both Scotland and the countries that we partner with?
First Minister. So many of these projects are in fields such as in health, in education, in climate action and in tackling poverty. And of course there are mutual lessons to be learned around some of the issues in relation to disease management and vaccination development, and these are important public health improvements and benefits that will be shared by us all.
And Douglas Ross.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I ask the First Minister, when he spoke to dentists in Malawi, did he get asked why hundreds of Scottish dentists have left the profession in recent years? And when he was discussing dentistry in Africa, did he spare a thought for a single one of the thousands of Scots who can't get an NHS dentist after 18 years of the SNP being in power?
First Minister.
I am, as Mr Ross knows, I'm acutely focused on the challenges that people in Scotland face. I'm acutely focused on the challenges that people in Scotland face, which is why we're taking the actions that we're taking in relation to the investments in the National Health Service and the expansion of provision. I'm also very proud of the fact that Scottish institutions have helped train a cohort of dentists in Malawi who will significantly increase the oral health care of people in Malawi and provide opportunities. And the pride and esteem that was expressed towards the advantages and the connections with Scottish institutions was palpable, and Scotland should be very proud of it.
Thank you. That concludes the ministerial statement. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next item of business.